First class is not a place you wander into by mistake. The white woman seated in 1C delivered the words without raising her voice, which somehow made them cut deeper. Alicia Monroe stopped in the aisle, one hand resting on the handle of her leather briefcase, the other holding a boarding pass that clearly displayed the same seat number. Around her, the first-class cabin fell quiet. A man lowered his newspaper. A flight attendant paused beside the galley. Even the soft hiss of conditioned air seemed louder than before. Alicia looked at the seat marker, then at the woman occupying it. "You are sitting in my assigned seat," she said. Her tone remained calm. The woman lifted a glass of sparkling water and studied Alicia's charcoal coat, simple gold earrings, and carefully braided hair. Her expression carried the certainty of someone who had already decided which person belonged and which person did not. Before this story goes any further, subscribe and stay with us, because what happened next would force an entire airline to confront the difference between customer service and human dignity. The woman set down her glass. "I think you should check your ticket again." Alicia did. Flight 286 to Denver. First class. Seat 1C. Nothing had changed. "It is correct," she said. Then the system made an error. The woman turned toward the window, dismissing her. Alicia felt the edge of the boarding pass press into her palm. She had boarded quietly, placed her coat in the overhead compartment, and stepped aside to let an older couple pass. She had done nothing that could be mistaken for confusion. Still, every eye in the cabin now seemed to be measuring her reaction instead of the evidence in her hand. A lead flight attendant approached from the front galley. His name tag read Ethan Caldwell. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said warmly, recognizing the seated passenger. "Is everything all right?" Rebecca Whitmore gave him a tired smile. "This woman insists I am in her seat." Ethan turned to Alicia. The warmth vanished. "May I see your boarding pass?" Alicia handed it to him. He studied it for barely 2 seconds. There may have been a last-minute reassignment. "Then please check both." "Reservations," Alicia said. Rebecca reached for her phone and held up a screenshot. The display showed Flight 286 and Seat 1C. Ethan glanced at it but did not scan anything. "Mrs. Whitmore appears to have the same assignment," he said. Alicia looked directly at him. "You scanned mine. Why are you not verifying hers?" Rebecca's mouth tightened. "I do not appreciate being accused of dishonesty." "I did not accuse you," Alicia replied. "I asked him to verify the seat." Ethan shifted closer, lowering his voice as though Alicia were creating a scene. "We have an open seat in the main cabin. I can arrange compensation for the inconvenience." A teenage girl seated across the aisle lifted her eyes from her phone. Alicia noticed the camera lens angled toward them. "You confirmed that my ticket is valid," Alicia said. "Why should I move?" Ethan glanced toward the crowded aisle behind her. "Because we need to depart on time." The answer revealed more than he intended. Rebecca's comfort mattered. The schedule mattered. Alicia's evidence did not. Rebecca leaned toward Ethan and whispered loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, "She is making me feel unsafe." Alicia had not moved closer. She had not raised her voice. She stood exactly where she had been standing, holding the ticket that proved she belonged there. Ethan reached for the radio clipped near his waist. "Ma'am, I need you to cooperate." Alicia met his eyes. Cooperation should not mean surrendering the truth. The teenage girl began recording. Rebecca tightened her grip around the phone displaying Seat 1C. And for the first time, Alicia noticed that the numbers on the screenshot did not align with the rest of the text. Ethan's eyes followed Alicia's gaze to the crooked numbers on Rebecca's screen. For half a second, uncertainty crossed his face, but he buried it beneath a practiced smile. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I scan the mobile pass?" Rebecca pulled the phone closer to her chest. "The signal is weak. It will not load properly." "You are already displaying it," Alicia said. Rebecca looked at her sharply. "I was speaking to the flight attendant." Ethan stepped between them, not enough to block Alicia's view, but enough to signal whose comfort he intended to protect. "Ms. Monroe, your boarding pass is valid. We are simply dealing with a duplicate assignment." "Then verify both records," Alicia replied. There is nothing duplicate about the truth. The teenage girl across the aisle adjusted her phone. Her name was Lily Parker, and the small red symbol on her screen showed that she was recording. Her mother leaned closer. "Lily, do not get involved." Lily kept the camera steady. "He checked only her ticket." Rebecca heard her and turned. "Young lady, recording strangers is extremely rude." Lily's cheeks flushed, but she did not lower the phone. Ethan reached toward Rebecca's screen again. "I need the reservation code." Rebecca sighed as if cooperation were an unreasonable burden. "I have been a platinum member for 14 years. My account should be enough." "Her membership is not a seat number," Alicia said. The words were quiet, but several passengers nodded. Ethan glanced toward them, then toward the line forming behind Alicia. Boarding had slowed. A man in a business suit checked his watch and exhaled impatiently. Rebecca noticed and leaned into the growing pressure. "This is becoming ridiculous. Put her somewhere else so we can leave." Alicia felt the leather handle of her briefcase against her wrist. Inside it rested a photograph of her mother beside the first aircraft Monroe Air had ever owned. She had promised herself this trip would be about the scholarship meeting in Denver, not about her father or the company attached to his name. She had removed the family service code from her reservation that morning. No private escort. No executive alert. No employee instructed to recognize her. Just a woman with a valid ticket and a seat she had paid for. Ethan tapped her boarding pass against his palm. "There is an open seat in row 23. You would receive a $300 travel credit." "You confirmed I belong in 1C, Alicia said. "Why does her comfort matter more than my evidence?" He looked away first. Rebecca unlocked her phone again and angled it toward him. Alicia saw the screenshot more clearly now. The seat number was darker than the surrounding text. The spacing was uneven. Ethan saw it too, but instead of scanning the code, he handed the phone back. "The reservation appears consistent." "You did not scan it," Alicia said. "I have enough information. You have one verified ticket and one picture." The cabin grew still again. Lily's mother lowered her voice. "She is right." Rebecca's expression changed. The confidence remained, but something nervous moved beneath it. She turned toward Ethan and pressed one hand lightly against her chest. "She has been standing over me, questioning me, and making me uncomfortable since she arrived." Alicia had not stepped forward. She had not raised her voice. Yet Ethan's posture hardened as though Rebecca's discomfort had become proof. "Ms. Monroe, this is your final request to take the available seat." Alicia looked at her boarding pass, then at the altered screenshot, then at Lily's camera. "It is not a request when refusing makes me the problem." Ethan lifted his radio. "I need a gate supervisor at the front of Flight 286. Rebecca settled deeper into seat 1C, believing the decision had already been made. But Lily kept recording, and the evidence on Rebecca's phone had not disappeared. The gate supervisor arrived carrying a tablet and the expression of someone who had already heard only one side of the story. Her name tag read Karen Doyle. She stopped beside Ethan, glanced at Rebecca in seat 1C, then turned toward Alicia. "I understand you are refusing an alternate seat." Alicia looked at the tablet in Karen's hands. "I am refusing to give up the seat your system assigned to me." Karen tapped the screen. "Mrs. Whitmore is a platinum member, and there appears to be a duplicate assignment. We can move you to row 23 and provide compensation." "Have you verified her reservation?" Alicia asked. Karen paused. Ethan answered for her. "I reviewed the information she provided." "You looked at a screenshot," Alicia said. "You scanned my ticket." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ms. Monroe, we are trying to resolve this without delaying everyone." The familiar pressure settled over the cabin again. The schedule. The waiting passengers. The quiet expectation that Alicia should absorb the inconvenience because she was the easiest person to move. Lily continued recording from across the aisle. Her mother no longer asked her to stop. Rebecca folded her arms and looked toward the window as if the outcome had already been decided. Alicia felt the weight of her leather briefcase against her leg. Inside it, beneath the scholarship documents, was the photograph of her mother standing beside Monroe Air's first leased aircraft. 3 months earlier, Alicia had placed that same photograph on her father's desk during a difficult conversation at the company headquarters. Jonathan Monroe had shown her reports proving that customer complaints had fallen after the airline introduced new bias training. Alicia had read every page. Then she had asked, "Are people being treated better, or have they stopped believing anyone will listen?" Her father had leaned back in his chair. He had built Monroe Air from a small regional carrier into one of the most successful privately controlled airlines in the country. He trusted data because data had helped him survive. Alicia trusted experience because experience revealed what reports often concealed. "Our employees know the standard," Jonathan had said. "They know it when they recognize who is watching," Alicia had replied. That morning, she had removed the family service code from her reservation. She declined the private entrance, the executive escort, and the quiet alert that would have placed her name on every supervisor's screen. She had not planned to test anyone. She only wanted to fly to Denver, review the scholarship program established in her mother's memory, and return home without ceremony. But now the question she had asked her father stood directly in front of her. How would the airline treat her when nobody believed she had influence? Karen held out her hand. "May I see your identification?" Alicia gave her a driver's license. Karen compared it with the boarding pass. "The names match," she said. "Of course they match." Rebecca released an impatient breath. "How much longer are we going to entertain this?" Karen turned toward her. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need your reservation code." Rebecca reached into her handbag, searched briefly, then shook her head. "The application signed me out." "You can give her your last name and confirmation email," Alicia said. Rebecca looked at her with cold irritation. "You are not part of this conversation. I am the person whose seat you took." Ethan stepped forward. "That tone is not helping." Alicia's voice had not changed. Lily's camera captured that too. Karen entered Rebecca's name into the tablet. Her fingers slowed. A reservation appeared, but the seat beside it did not say 1C. Rebecca noticed the shift in Karen's expression and immediately leaned toward Ethan. "She has been provoking me since she arrived. She keeps making accusations and standing over me." "That is not true," Lily said. Every face turned toward her. The 16-year-old lowered the phone just enough to meet Karen's eyes. "The woman in the aisle has been calm the whole time." Rebecca's cheeks colored. "A child cannot understand an adult situation." Lily's mother sat straighter. "She understands what she recorded." Karen looked at the phone, then at Alicia, then back at the reservation on her tablet. Ethan moved closer and lowered his voice. "We still have a passenger refusing crew direction." Alicia watched the focus shift away from the seat record and back toward her behavior. The evidence was becoming inconvenient, so the language changed. Karen locked the tablet. "Ms. Monroe, I need you to accept the alternate seat or leave the aircraft while we investigate." Alicia held her gaze. "You already have the answer on that screen." Karen did not respond. Ethan raised his radio. "Request airport police at the front of flight 286. Passenger is refusing to comply." Rebecca settled into the stolen seat, but her confidence no longer looked effortless. Alicia rested one hand on her mother's briefcase and understood exactly why she would not call her father. Not yet. 2 airport police officers entered the cabin less than 3 minutes later, their uniforms still carrying small beads of rain from the jet bridge. The first officer, Mark Dalton, stopped beside Ethan and listened while the flight attendant spoke in a low, controlled voice. "The passenger is refusing a direct crew instruction," Ethan said. "She has become confrontational and is delaying departure." Alicia stood 6 feet away, silent, holding the same valid boarding pass she had shown from the beginning. Mark looked toward Rebecca first. She sat rigidly in seat 1C, one hand resting against her chest, her expression arranged into careful distress. Then he turned to Alicia. "Ma'am, I need you to gather your belongings and come with us." "Before I leave," Alicia said, "please ask them to verify both reservations." Mark glanced at Karen. "Has that been done?" Karen unlocked her tablet but did not show him the screen. "We have a seating dispute," and she rejected the solution offered by the crew. "The solution was to move the person with the verified ticket," Alicia replied. Rebecca shook her head. This is exactly what I meant. She keeps challenging everyone. Alicia felt the attention of the cabin settle on her again. She had not raised her voice. She had not moved closer to Rebecca. Yet every calm sentence was being translated into aggression by people who needed their first decision to remain correct. Lily kept her phone aimed toward the aisle. She never threatened anyone, the teenager said. Ethan turned sharply. Put the phone away. Lily's mother placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. She is recording what happened. Ethan faced Mark. The passenger also tried to interfere with another customer's phone. Alicia's eyes moved to him. That is false. Mrs. Whitmore reported that you reached toward her device, Ethan said. I asked you to scan it. You were standing over me, Rebecca added. I felt intimidated. Lily spoke again. She never touched the phone. A gray-haired man in the second row lowered his newspaper. The girl is right. The woman has been calm. Another passenger nodded. For the first time, Mark looked uncertain. He held out his hand. May I see your boarding pass? Alicia gave it to him. He read the flight number, her full name, and the seat assignment. This says 1C. It has said 1C every time someone looked at it, Alicia replied. Mark turned toward Rebecca. I need to see your pass. Rebecca raised her phone. The altered screenshot glowed beneath her thumb. Mark leaned closer. I need the scannable code or the reservation number. The application is not working. Karen looked down at her tablet. Her reservation is in the system. Alicia watched the hesitation in her face. Tell him the seat number. Karen did not answer immediately. Ethan stepped between them. Officer, the immediate issue is compliance. The captain cannot depart while she remains in the aisle. Mark looked at Karen again. What seat is assigned to Mrs. Whitmore? Rebecca answered before Karen could speak. I was upgraded at the lounge. Karen's fingers moved across the screen. There is an upgrade request. Was it approved? Alicia asked. Silence followed. Rebecca leaned toward Ethan and lowered her voice, but everyone nearby heard her. She also tried to grab my phone when I showed you the pass. The accusation entered the official space between them. Ethan immediately lifted his radio. Add attempted interference with passenger property to the report. Lily rose slightly from her seat. That did not happen. Her mother gently guided her back down, but the recording continued. Alicia looked directly at Ethan. A false report does not become true because it sounds official. Mark studied her face, then the valid ticket in his hand. His expression suggested that he had begun to question the story he received, but procedure still carried more weight than doubt. Ma'am, we can investigate this at the gate, he said. I need you to come with me now. Alicia reached for the worn leather briefcase at her feet. And will you investigate before this plane leaves? Mark did not answer. Behind him, Ethan spoke into the radio again. Passenger removal in progress. Rebecca settled back into seat 1C, but Lily's camera caught the moment Karen finally turned her tablet toward Mark. Beside Rebecca Whitmore's name, the assigned seat was not 1C. It was 11A. Mark looked at the tablet, then at Karen. Seat 11A. Karen nodded reluctantly. That is the confirmed assignment. The words should have ended the dispute. Instead, Ethan glanced toward the cockpit and checked his watch. We still have a passenger refusing crew instructions, he said. Alicia watched the truth arrive and then get pushed aside. It was no longer about Rebecca's seat. It was about protecting every decision made after Ethan chose whom to believe. Mark handed Alicia's boarding pass back to her. I understand your ticket is valid, he said. But the captain has requested that we resolve this at the gate. Resolve what? Alicia asked. The seat belongs to me. Her upgrade was denied. The report against me is false. Mark lowered his voice. I am asking you to come voluntarily. Around them, passengers shifted in their seats. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked toward the cabin clock as if the delay mattered more than the woman being removed for telling the truth. Rebecca remained in 1C, staring straight ahead. The confidence in her face had thinned, but she still made no move to stand. Lily held her phone steady. "Why is she leaving when that woman is in the wrong seat?" she asked. Ethan turned toward her. "This is an operational matter." "No," Lily said. "It is happening right in front of us." Her mother rested a hand on her shoulder, but her own expression had changed. She was no longer trying to stay uninvolved. Alicia bent and lifted her leather briefcase. The worn handle settled into her palm, familiar and grounding. Inside, the photograph of her mother pressed against the scholarship documents. She thought of the students waiting in Denver, young people who wanted careers in aviation but had learned early that access and belonging were not always the same thing. "Will you hold the flight until both statements are reviewed?" Alicia asked Mark. He hesitated. Ethan answered. "The aircraft will depart as soon as the aisle is clear." Alicia looked at him. "So the investigation begins after the evidence leaves?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You are continuing to challenge crew authority." "I am challenging a false report." Mark stepped slightly to the side, leaving a clear path toward the aircraft door. He did not touch her. He did not raise his voice. That almost made the moment worse. Everything appeared orderly. Professional. Reasonable. Yet the person with the valid ticket was being removed while the person who lied remained seated in first class. Alicia took one step toward the exit. Then another. The cabin seemed to stretch around her. No one applauded. No one protested loudly. The only sound was Lily's quiet breathing behind the phone and the steady rain against the windows. As Alicia passed seat 1C, Rebecca finally looked at her. "You should have accepted the other seat," she whispered. Alicia stopped for 1 second. "You should have accepted the truth." Then she continued toward the door. At the entrance to the jet bridge, she turned back. Lily was still recording. The gray-haired passenger had risen halfway from his seat. Karen stared at the tablet showing 11A. Mark stood beside Alicia with doubt written across his face. Ethan reached for the door control. "She never did anything," Lily said. Her voice carried through the cabin. This time, several passengers nodded. Alicia stepped onto the jet bridge, where cold air moved through the narrow passage and rain blurred the terminal lights beyond the glass. The aircraft door began to close behind her. Inside, Rebecca released a long breath and settled into the stolen seat. Outside, Mark looked down at Alicia's boarding pass once more. "Seat 1C," he said quietly. Alicia did not answer. Her phone vibrated inside her coat, but she ignored it. She wanted to know whether anyone would correct the injustice without learning her last name. Behind the sealed aircraft door, Ethan told the captain the issue had been resolved. At that exact moment, Lily's recording reached the social media desk at Monroe Air headquarters, and one employee froze when she recognized the woman being escorted away. Alicia stood on the jet bridge while rain whispered against the glass walls and the aircraft door sealed behind her with a soft mechanical click. The sound was not loud, but it felt final. Mark remained beside her, holding the boarding pass he had already read twice. "I am sorry," he said quietly. Alicia looked through the narrow window toward the white fuselage. "For removing me, or for believing the report before checking it?" Mark lowered his eyes. "Both." She reached for the pass, and he returned it. Without argument. Inside the terminal, travelers moved past with rolling suitcases and paper coffee cups, unaware that a woman with a valid first-class ticket had just been removed from her own seat. Alicia opened her leather briefcase and found the old photograph beneath the scholarship documents. Her mother stood beside Monroe Air's first leased airplane, smiling into the Georgia sun with one hand resting on the metal body. The picture had faded around the edges, but the expression remained clear. Her mother had believed that an airline could carry more than passengers. It could carry opportunity, dignity, and trust. Alicia pressed her thumb against the photograph. "A company shows its values when it thinks nobody important is watching," her mother had once told her. On the other side of the door, Rebecca leaned back in seat 1C and closed her eyes. Ethan informed the captain that the disturbance had been resolved. Karen remained near the galley, staring at the reservation record on her tablet. Seat 11A still appeared beside Rebecca's name. She could no longer call it a duplicate. She could only call it what it was. Lily's recording continued to spread. 10,000 views became 20,000, then 50,000. At Monroe Air headquarters, social media coordinator Maya Brooks watched the video in stunned silence. She recognized Alicia from an employee charity event the previous winter, but she did not rely on memory. She opened the executive directory, compared the photograph, and called corporate security. "I need immediate identity verification," she said. A passenger was removed from Flight 286. Security confirmed Alicia's full name within seconds. The alert moved from corporate security to the operations director, then to Jonathan Monroe's office. Jonathan was reviewing quarterly numbers when his assistant entered without knocking. She placed a tablet on his desk. On the screen, his daughter walked through the aircraft door while a white passenger remained in her seat. He watched the clip once. Then again. He did not shout. His face became still. "Is the aircraft moving?" he asked. "Pushback clearance was requested 2 minutes ago." Jonathan picked up the secure phone. "Stop it at the gate. Preserve the passenger list, reservation history, crew report, and every available gate recording. Nobody changes a single entry." The operations director relayed the order immediately. Inside the cockpit, a secure telephone began ringing just as the captain prepared to release the parking brake. Ethan looked toward the closed door. Karen's tablet flashed with a red operational hold. Rebecca opened her eyes. The engines continued humming, but the aircraft did not move. Back on the jet bridge, Mark reread Alicia's boarding pass and finally asked the question no one had asked before. "Do you know why they stopped the flight?" Alicia looked at the photograph in her hand, then threw the rein toward the airplane carrying her family's name. "Not yet," she said. But when her phone began ringing and her father's name appeared on the screen, she understood that the truth had finally reached someone they could not ignore. Alicia let the phone ring once before answering. "Dad." Jonathan's voice came through low and controlled. "Are you safe?" She looked at Mark, at the sealed aircraft door, and at the rain sliding down the jet bridge windows. "I am standing outside the plane with a valid ticket in my hand." Silence followed. It was not confusion. It was anger being forced into discipline. "The flight is grounded," Jonathan said. "No one leaves the gate until the records are preserved and the facts are verified." Alicia closed her eyes briefly. "Do not turn this into a rescue. You were removed from your own seat. And that matters even if I am not your daughter." Jonathan did not answer immediately. On the other side of the door, the cabin had changed. The red operational hold remained on Karen's tablet. Ethan stood near the galley while the captain spoke with headquarters through the secure line. Rebecca sat upright in 1C, watching every face around her. The confidence that had carried her through the dispute was gone. "What exactly did operations say?" Ethan asked. Karen looked at the message again. "Preserve all records. Do not modify the crew report. Do not move the aircraft. Corporate security is verifying the incident." Lily still held her phone, though her arm had begun to ache. Her mother whispered, "Keep recording." The captain stepped into the cabin with the secure telephone in his hand. "Ms. Monroe is being brought back aboard," he said. Rebecca's expression sharpened. "Why?" The captain looked directly at her. "Because the verified reservation shows that seat 1C belongs to her. I was upgraded." Karen turned the tablet so everyone nearby could see it. "Your upgrade request was denied at 7:42 this morning. Your assigned seat is 11A." Rebecca shook her head. "That screenshot came from the application." "No," Karen said. Her voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier certainty. "The formatting does not match the current mobile pass." Ethan stared at Rebecca's phone. "You told me it was valid." "I believed it was." Lily spoke from across the aisle. "You changed the number." Rebecca turned toward her. "You do not know what you saw." "My video does." The captain asked Lily's mother for permission to review the recording. She agreed. Lily moved the timeline back to the first moments of the confrontation. The video showed Alicia standing calmly. It captured every request to scan both tickets. It captured Rebecca's claim that Alicia had reached for her phone. It also showed Alicia's hands remaining at her sides. Ethan watched in silence. Mark entered behind Alicia as the aircraft door reopened. The cabin fell still. Alicia stepped inside carrying her leather briefcase, her mother's photograph tucked safely beneath the flap. No one applauded. No one spoke her name. The silence was heavier than before because the people inside now understood that she had been telling the truth from the beginning. The captain approached her. "Ms. Monroe, the airline confirms that seat 1C is yours." Alicia looked toward Rebecca. "It was always mine." Rebecca stood slowly. "I did not know who you were." Alicia held her gaze. "You knew I was a passenger. That should have been enough." Karen's tablet vibrated again. A new message appeared from corporate security. It contained Alicia's verified identity and a direct instruction from Jonathan Monroe to preserve every statement, every recording, and every decision made by the crew. Ethan read the name twice. His face lost its color. "Jonathan Monroe is your father." Alicia did not answer him. She looked instead at Mark. "Now that you know who I am, does the evidence look different?" Mark lowered his eyes. "No. The evidence was clear before." Alicia nodded once. "Then that is what needs to be investigated." The captain held the secure telephone at his side while the cabin waited for Alicia to decide what happened next. Jonathan's voice came through the speaker from headquarters. "Suspend the crew and remove Mrs. Whitmore from the flight." Rebecca stood beside seat 1C, her face tense. Ethan stared toward the floor. Karen held the tablet against her chest. Alicia placed her leather briefcase on the empty seat and looked at the people who had questioned her ticket, ignored the evidence, and accepted a false accusation because it was easier than admitting their first judgment was wrong. "No," she said. Jonathan paused. "Alicia, they removed you from an aircraft your family owns. That is exactly why this cannot be handled like a family dispute." She turned toward the passengers. Lily's phone remained raised, recording every word. "If you fire everyone immediately, the company will say a few bad people caused this. Then nothing underneath will change." Ethan looked up. "I made a serious mistake." "You made a series of choices," Alicia replied. "You verified my ticket but not hers. You offered me compensation to accept an injustice. You called my questions aggressive. Then you gave the police a report that left out the evidence." Ethan swallowed. "I was trying to keep the flight on schedule. You protected the schedule by removing the person who was easiest to displace." Karen stepped forward. "I saw seat 11A on the reservation and still asked you to leave." Her voice shook slightly. "I should have stopped the removal." Alicia met her eyes. "You should have treated both passengers by the same standard before it reached that point." Mark stood near the open aircraft door. "I relied on the crew report instead of completing my own review." "And what made the report more believable than the ticket in my hand?" Alicia asked. Mark looked toward Lily's recording, then back at Alicia. "Authority," he said. "And assumption." The honesty did not erase what happened, but it changed the silence around him. Rebecca reached for her handbag. "This has gone far enough." "I apologized." Alicia turned toward her. "You said you did not know who I was." "That was not an apology." Rebecca's face tightened. "What else do you want me to say?" "That you saw a black woman standing beside a first-class seat and decided she could not belong there." The cabin became still. Rebecca looked toward the window, but there was nowhere left for her confidence to hide. Mark picked up the printed boarding information Karen had retrieved from the reservation. "Mrs. Whitmore, you occupied a seat that was not assigned to you and gave a false account that caused another passenger to be removed. You need to leave the aircraft while the incident is reviewed." Rebecca looked at Alicia one last time. "Are you really going to let them take me off?" Alicia's expression remained calm. "I am letting the same verified facts apply to both of us." Rebecca collected her purse and coat. No one spoke as she walked into the jet bridge. When the door remained open behind her, Jonathan asked, "What do you want done?" Alicia picked up her mother's photograph from inside the briefcase and held it for a moment beneath the cabin light. Preserve every recording and every version of the crew report. Hire an independent review team. Reopen every passenger removal case from the last 5 years where words such as aggressive, threatening, or non-compliant were used without clear evidence. Ethan listened without looking away. Alicia continued. No police request during a seat dispute until both reservations have been verified. Witnesses must be interviewed before a report is finalized. Employees cannot offer compensation as a shortcut for moving the person who was wronged. Jonathan answered immediately. Approved. Alicia looked at Ethan, Karen, and Mark. Do not hide them behind resignation letters. Require them to explain each decision and help rebuild the process they failed to follow. Ethan nodded slowly. I will do it. Mark said, so will I. Lily finally lowered her phone. Alicia looked toward the empty seat 1C, but she did not sit down yet. This flight should remain grounded until every passenger has been given an honest explanation, she said. Not because of who my father is, but because the truth was known before anyone cared about my name. The flight remained at the gate for another 43 minutes while every passenger received a clear explanation of why departure had been delayed. The captain did not describe Alicia as disruptive. He did not call the incident a misunderstanding. He said that a verified passenger had been removed from her assigned seat after the crew failed to apply the same standard to both people involved. The words changed the atmosphere inside the cabin. Several passengers lowered their eyes. The gray-haired man from the second row approached Alicia before returning to his seat. I saw what was happening, he said. I should have spoken sooner. Alicia thanked him, but she did not tell him that silence had been harmless. It had not been harmless. Silence had allowed a false accusation to become an official report. When the investigation team confirmed that every recording and reservation record had been secured, the aircraft was cleared to depart. Ethan remained off duty for the flight, and another lead attendant took his place. Karen returned to the terminal to provide a statement. Mark stayed at the gate until Alicia boarded again, then handed her the original report with his written request for an independent review of the police response. Alicia finally sat in 1C. She placed her mother's photograph beside the window and watched the rain slide across the glass. Lily sat across the aisle with her mother, her phone now resting in her lap. Are you glad you recorded it? Alicia asked. Lily thought for a moment. I am glad somebody could not pretend it happened differently. Alicia nodded. That matters. 6 weeks later, Monroe Air published the results of the independent investigation. 42 previous removal cases were reopened. 9 passengers received formal apologies and reimbursement after records showed that their tickets or witness statements had not been properly reviewed. The airline introduced a rule requiring equal verification during seat disputes, prohibited crew members from labeling passengers with unsupported terms, and required supervisory approval before police could be called for non-violent ticket disagreements. Ethan joined the reform team after completing disciplinary review. He spoke to new employees about the moment he confused authority with accuracy. Karen helped design a reservation screen that displayed both disputed assignments side by side, making it harder to question one passenger while protecting another. Mark's department created a checklist requiring officers to examine available evidence before acting on a removal request. Rebecca faced consequences for providing false information and lost her elite customer status. Alicia did not celebrate that outcome. Accountability, she believed, was not humiliation. It was the responsibility to face what a choice had caused. At the scholarship ceremony in Denver, Jonathan stood beside his daughter beneath a photograph of Alicia's mother. He admitted publicly that the company had measured customer satisfaction without measuring who had stopped trusting the complaint system. Lily received the first Evelyn Monroe Aviation Scholarship for moral courage and community leadership. When the ceremony ended, Alicia returned to the airport alone. She boarded another Monroe Air flight, placed the worn leather briefcase beneath seat 1C, and rested her mother's photograph on the tray table. Morning light spread across the wing as the aircraft rose above the clouds. No one in the cabin knew her last name. No one offered special treatment. The attendant checked her ticket, welcomed her aboard, and treated the next passenger with the same respect. Alicia looked out at the endless blue and understood that justice was not proven by how a company treated the owner's daughter after recognizing her. It was proven by whether the next unknown woman would be believed without needing power behind her. The lesson was simple: dignity should never depend on wealth, status, or a famous name. But one question remained long after the flight disappeared. Into the morning sky, if Lily had never raised her phone and Jonathan Monroe had owned nothing, who would have stood up for Alicia?